Never ever pick up a hitchhiker. So this was told to me by an old family friend, Nikki, numerous times as a kid growing up, as one of those like advice stories to keep in mind through the years. And to her credit, I've never forgotten it. Whenever anything associated with hitchhiking comes up, it always springs to mind and probably always will. Makes me a bit ill whenever I think about it actually. So Nikki, who grew up at the same time as my dad around the early 80s, was a young woman in her mid-20s. She's one of those real kind-hearted souls, always willing to help another out in a time of need. And I can't imagine her being anything other than that when she was younger, so I totally see her doing this too. So driving into the city, about a 2-hour or so drive out from town, she saw a man walking down the side of the road. As she neared, he turned in typical hitchhiker manner, stuck out of all arm and thumb. Nikki, bless her heart, pulled over and asked him if he needed any help. She told me that he was really polite, if not a bit shy. When he asked for a lift into the city, Nikki gave a smile and popped open the passenger door for the guy, who tossed his bag into the back seat and buckled up for the ride ahead. They talked pleasantly for most of the trip about friends, the news, and etc. She felt that they were getting on really well and even bought him dinner at the pit stop, a little over halfway there. She says he seemed really flustered and awkward when she pit. But one of the things they had talked about was money and how he was pretty dang strapped for cash, which was why he was hitchhiking in the first place. But eventually relented and they went on their way. As soon as they got into the city, he thanked her profusely for the ride and the food and asked to be dropped off once they hit downtown. Before getting out, he asked for Nikki's phone number so he could contact her someday and catch up. Thrilled at the prospects of knowing how her new friend was faring, Nikki wrote it down for him and drove off with the warm feeling of a good deed done. Now, I'm sorry if you were expecting something creepy to have happened by now, but I think this is what freaked me out so much as a kid. Now, nice everything seemed to have worked out. Nikki would get this crease in her forehead and a funny look in her eye when she would tell me the next part. A week later, she got a phone call from her driving buddy. He didn't let her get a word in edgewise after hello, and told her that she should thank God that she was raised so nice, because when he first got in her car, he was planning on raping and murdering her once they got to the pit stop. That he was going to steal that car and dump her body in a ditch further down the road and go on his merry way. But after she talked with him so kindly and treated him to dinner with a smile on her face, he couldn't bring himself to do it. He didn't think that he could live with himself after doing that to such a nice lady. They threatened to kill a park ranger. This story comes from my father's experience as a hitchhiker. During the late 60s, early 70s, when he was between 13 to 16 years old, my father took off for the summer and went on a big trip around the northeast Quebec. Apparently, his parents didn't care about him. Anyway, as he's going along, he gets picked up by a bunch of Americans headed up in the same way. I can't recall if these guys were draft dodgers or vets, but either way, it became pretty clear to him that these guys weren't completely sane. Not wanting to draw their attention to this fact, he figured that he would take the ride and ditch them as soon as possible. That first night, they end up in some sort of campground. While setting up their stuff, one of the rangers comes over and starts giving them trouble. Either they hadn't paid their fees or didn't want to pay or whatever. After a little while, the ranger leaves and the Americans are really bothered by this guy. Rather than address the issue, they start putting together a plan to off this guy. They'd apparently brought some rifles across the border and thought it would be easier to kill the ranger than be hassled about fees. My dad is generally a calm guy, but when he realized what was going on and that these guys would not be talked out of it, he was thinking, what am I getting myself into? The next time the ranger comes back, my dad approaches him right away, tells him that he has got to go. I'm not sure if he paid the guy or just warned him, but either way, the ranger left and didn't come back. The craziest part of the story, in my opinion, is that I think he stayed with the guys for a few more days, rather than piece the heck out like most people would do. They kept him on with them, probably saved the ranger's life and saved himself from a much worse fate. He picked up a murderer. Not my story, but my dad's. He was traveling through Arizona on his way to Mexico. He looked to the side of the road and saw a man hitchhiking. My dad pulled over and asked where the guy's going, to which the man said, "The next town over." My dad, being a very trusting man and this being the 70s or 80s, decided he would give him a ride. While they are driving, they start talking. My father asked for his name. His name was Drep. My dad, quite shocked, looked at him and replied, "Holy crap, that's my name." They had a few small conversations, and at the next town, my dad let him out and continued to Mexico. He eventually reached the border. He pulled up and the border official asked to see his license. He took a good long look at the license. The official then took off his big aviator sunglasses and told him to pull over to the side. My dad got out of the car and they put him in a room while they searched his car. He was sitting in the room for a good few hours admiring the entire wall of confiscated tequila. When the officer walked back in and apologized for the wait, my dad asked what the reason was, and the officer replied, "There is a warrant out for the arrest of Drep." Once again, dazed, my dad asked, "What for?" The officer replied, "Murder." My dad damn near crapped his pants.